Now, going through the homework corrections of what I asked you to do on Friday, after going through how to draw the graph of sine in various different domains and use that to find certain values, without showing you what cosine of x looked like, I asked you to do two questions for homework that involved drawing the graph of cosine of x. The first one wanted us to work with radian measure. So it was the graph of cosine x in the domain minus pi to pi. So what I would have hoped you'd think to do was use your degrees as you're used to, excuse me, and realize that minus pi is minus 180 and pi is 180, and then divide up the rest in 45-degree segments like this: minus 90, 45, minus 45, and 135, and minus 135 degrees. Or you could change your calculator to radian mode and input them in the same way. So then you'd use an input-output table and work out your different points. So cosine of minus pi is minus 1. It's actually off slightly. Should have been here on that line. And cosine of minus 3/4 pi is roughly minus 0.7. Cosine of minus pi over 2 is 0. Cosine of minus pi over 4 is 0.7. Cosine of 0 is 1, because cosine and sine are opposite to each other. One is the x direction and one is the y direction. And then the same thing, 45 degrees, 0.7, 90 degrees, 0, 135 degrees, minus 0.7, and 180 degrees down to minus 1. So then once you've plotted your points, you need to draw a smooth curve going through all of those. Take your time with it, go over it lightly, and then with more force. Okay, so again, cosine and sine have a very similar graph to each other. Sine goes up and down like this, and cosine does the same thing, except it's shifted where the maximum is up here, but it's got the same shape other than that, cosine of x. There was a follow-up question here where you were asked to estimate the maximum point of the curve in this domain. So the maximum point is just up here. It's our max point. And the max point is y equal to 1. Or you might call it 0, 1. So there's the maximum point of our graph. Okay, that's cosine. We're going to look at it in the notes in the second video that I do. Now, the second question I asked you to do was to plot y equals cos x in the domain minus 90 to 540. Once we get the idea of the basic shape, you don't have to plot so many points. So I could go in 45-degree increments and have my 0.7s and my minus 0.7s filled in as well, or I can just go in 90-degree increments. Now, if I were to just join those graphs, I'd have a very zigzag-looking thing. So we have to remember that it is a smooth curve, and it's a smooth curve that oscillates between 1 and minus 1. So you're just doing the same curve that we've always had all along. Get the basic shape, and then you can go over it with more force. Okay, so it looks very much like a wave going up and down. I would get full marks for that, even though it's a little bit ragged, because I've shown my understanding of the shape of the curve. And it's going through my points. This is not as accurate as a computer-generated one would be, so if I use it to estimate values, it's going to be slightly different to what I have in my calculator. But that's the basic idea of the curve that we're going to draw. So there was a follow-up question then. We were asked to find the values of x, for which cos of x is equal to 0.9. The values of x for which cos of x is equal to 0.9. So cos of x is our y. So I'm looking for the line y equals 0.9. So 0.9, roughly there on my graph. And I draw a horizontal line going straight across through my graph, and I find out where does it intersect my graph and what are the x values that match with that. You might have done yours with a box per point. There we go, that's the line where y is equal to 0.9 going across there. And we can see that it intersects our graph at 1, 2, 3, 4 different places. And I really should use dotted lines coming down like this. And then I need to estimate what these are. So 22, that's around minus 22 degrees. That's around plus 22 degrees, maybe 23. This is 270, 315. Say it's about 337 maybe, and 382 or 383. You don't have to be super accurate with these. So those are my x values. Now before I'd answer, I would check if they make sense. So if I get cosine of negative 22 degrees, it's very, very close to the 0.9. So I'm happy enough with that. For the fairly rough graph that I have, cosine of a plus 22 degrees, same idea. Cosine of 337, yeah, that's very close. Okay, and I'll fill in the last one as well. Cosine of 382. Yeah, I'm happy with those now. It's a bit above the 0.9 that they asked for, but it's close enough that we would get full marks for that. So the important thing is that you answer based on what's on your graph. So if you're getting an answer that's way out, but you're fairly confident that it's right for your graph, there's a couple of things. It means your graph is wrong. So if you have the time, you should fix your graph. And if you don't have the time, leave your answers as they are, because you can get full marks for wrong answers that are correct for your graph. And that's the important thing. So the answers here, the values of x are x equal to minus 22, plus 22, 337, 382. Okay, now I'll stop there, and you might let me know if you have any questions on that. We're going to be looking at the graph of cosine of x in our notes next.